Let's talk about death, and let's talk about when somebody close to you passes away, the impact it can have on your life. And I want to share with you my experience about my dad, who died at the age of 56 in 2021. I'll paint the picture, but I more importantly want to speak about what his death and illness did to my life, and the butterfly effect of him dying essentially has had a subconscious impact on the way that I operate today. Now, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is JP. I'm a 32-year-old entrepreneur. I own a business with 2 other directors, and we've been now going for 5 years. Since 2020, 1,600 paid members. We teach match betting in Australia. We're expanding, we're compounding, but this all started, funnily enough, when my dad was diagnosed with motor neuron disease in 2017, August. In fact, it wasn't diagnosed till Jan 2018. He actually went overseas to Africa, and he would travel every single year. He was born in Cyprus, moved to Australia at the age of 9, became an air conditioning mechanic, grew a business, sole trader, managed by my mum, 3 children. I'm the oldest, 2 younger sisters, and he would work his fucking ass off. That's all I know about my dad. Work hard, play hard, right? He would travel every single year, go back to Cyprus. He actually went 19 years in a row before he missed because he couldn't fly in his year before he passed away. He was someone who was a giver, very generous, and because he knew how to make money, started off here with absolutely nothing, eventually he knew how to make money. He would spend his money crazily. If he wanted something, he got it. Now, you could even say that he was reckless. Now, I didn't realize until I was an adult that I had picked up a lot of the traits that my father has when it comes to money. One, I learned how to make it, whether that was subconsciously from him and being around the abundance of cash in the house when I was growing up, maybe. But 2, more importantly, the way I spend my money and the way I don't think about money anymore because of my dad. And that has been 2 of the biggest things that I've learned. And inherently it comes from the fact that he didn't have regrets. If he wanted to go somewhere, pay for something, give something to someone, he didn't give 2 fucks. He couldn't care. He just, if I wanted to do it, if he wanted to do it, he would do it. And as children, we could have milked my dad because he wouldn't say no, right? We could have said to him, hey dad, I want this, he'd go get it. And we never did this. We never took the piss out of it. We never abused the power. We never abused his generosity. And it's weird because some people growing up in wealthy families do become spoiled brats, do become people who just leech off their parents and then never ever make their own money because they know they've just got it. I could have done that, and I know my parents would have given me that, but I didn't want that because of my own ego of wanting to build it myself. Anyway, back to the point. Dad got diagnosed. He actually went overseas to a safari trip in Africa with a cousin of his from his village, and he actually, I believe, got this sickness, motor neuron disease, which is a terminal illness of the motor neuron, so essentially the messenger that sends the inputs to the muscle to move and to function. They die when you have motor neuron disease. Now, there's a famous person in Australia called Neil Danaher, and he's had this disease now for, I reckon, a decade, maybe more. And he's made a massive campaign about raising money for it. And unfortunately, there hasn't been much success with this illness because there's literally no cure, there's no medication for it, there's nothing. You are diagnosed and you are told that you're going to die within the next 9 months to 4 years. And that's it. It's like no drugs, no cure, nothing. Go and enjoy your life, you're going to die. And the illness itself is fucking hard to witness fully. Now, for context, my dad used to work 6 days a week. Less so when he was older, but 6 days a week growing up. Monday to Saturday. Sundays he'd sleep on the couch or go fishing. If you believe in gender roles, classic male person goes out and gets the bread. Mum used to stay home, look after the house, cook, look after us kids, etc., etc. That's just what we were brought up on. But all of a sudden, at the age of 52 and a half, Dad was overseas and he called my mum and he sounded like he was slurring a bit with his speech. And my dad's not much of a drinker, or wasn't much of a drinker, but my mum said to him, why are you speaking like that? Are you drunk? And he's like, nah, just whatever. But I believe that he actually got an injection from a vaccination that he was told to get to go to Africa. And from there, that's when the symptoms started. This is not the point of the video, but that's just what I believe it came from. It triggered whatever the fuck he got, and then the rest is history. Essentially what happened from there was a slow death. And what happens with motor neuron disease is slowly your neurons slowly become less potent. But I remember the first time we started noticing more symptoms was when he came back. And this was not until the end of 2017. We actually took him, it may have been 18, we actually took him to the doctor. And the doctor said to him, because he had a bit of a speech thing, the doctor said, look, he looks like he's got a cold or something. It'll be right in a few days. And I was an osteopath at this point in time. I'd studied for 5 years. I'd qualified. I was a doctor of osteopathy. I was treating patients. So I knew a fair bit about the human body. I knew how to identify risky red flag symptoms like speech and things like that, identify stroke symptoms, things like this. So I knew something was wrong. And I sent him to one of my uni lecturers who I'd stayed in contact with after I finished uni. He's actually a naturopath, and I referred him straight to there, and within 20 minutes of that consultation, I'll shout out Jim Kiados. He works in Caulfield. He's a very intelligent individual, and he helped enormously through my dad's sickness. But he pretty much said, you need to get him to a neurologist ASAP. There is some pretty bad flags here, and he knew that my dad had something really serious. So we referred to the neurologist, got him within a couple of days, did some testing, and basically sat there and were told that my dad had motor neuron disease. Now for me, I knew what that meant. I knew it. He was done. He was going to die within the next 2 or 3 years. And my dad didn't know that at the time, and my dad is a very short-fused individual. We'd fight all the time growing up, but I still respected and loved him. And by this stage, I'd moved out of home. Well and truly, I was 2 or 3 years out of home now. And his first instinct was, he didn't really understand it at the start. And our first instinct at the start was, okay, how do we beat this thing? What can we do? And I was on the internet researching in feeds and websites and contacting people and seeing what we could do alternative to the medicine world, where they just say, enjoy your life and you're going to die. And throughout the next 2.5 years, it was a pretty tough ride. Now, what happens at the start? Nothing drastic happens, right? My dad's still a normal person, but his speech would start to have little tweaks to it. And you'd start to notice some symptoms, start losing a little bit of weight, muscle mass starts to drop off. He'd still work for the next 2 years. And his speech would start to become more like that, not as bad as you'd think towards the end. Then he would start having some coughing episodes, not being able to eat as much food because of the ability to swallow, starting to get thinner arms, started to develop a limp. And then eventually he started to fall over at work, and then we started to have to actually hold the bloke back because he was a danger to himself, and because he was that stubborn and his independence was what he only knew how to do, he started to lose the ability to do what he wanted to do. And it is the most fucked up thing that you could experience as a human being, wanting to do things but you can't do them. And I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, this disease, because you cannot do anything. You just literally die, and you slowly get weaker and weaker, and eventually you can't speak or eat. So not only can you not do anything, but you can't actually express your own feelings to other people or tell people what you want because you cannot function. You can't move your fucking hands eventually. You don't have the strength to do anything, and you can't speak or eat. Eventually a stomach tube got put into him, so we had to feed him through a tube. Now the recommendations from the medical professionals were just give him this fucking, essentially just this like bulker. I didn't want to just give him the shit that the doctors were telling him to give. So I was like, I'm going to give this guy micronutrients. I'm going to give him smoothies. I'm going to go and blend fucking beef and schnitzel and I fillet, and I'm going to chuck it in a smoothie and I'm going to feed it through his tube. Now, whether this actually helped in the long term, who knows? But we tried everything, and it was a really tough period for our family because what happened is my dad was getting upset that he couldn't do anything, and he'd have tantrums. He'd try and drive his car when he clearly couldn't even put the fucking foot on the pedal. It was dangerous. It was negligent. It was reckless. And it got to the point where we literally had to like take his keys off him because he wanted to do things and he couldn't. And it's a terrible thing to witness. And I'm only talking up until like 2019 here. 2020. In the last year, he actually got the worst. And that's where we had to get carers in. We had to get, because mum was living at home. My sisters were still living at home. In fact, one of my sisters was still out of home. One of them was still in home. Mum was looking after him. Mum had to put up for it. Not because my dad was a burden, but it was fucking tough. It was fucking tough to live around that. I'd go every single day. I moved closer to home, about 10 minutes away, instead of being half an hour away. And I used to come every single day to put him to bed. My house is double story at home and on my parents' house. And we had to put him from upstairs to downstairs. And he'd sleep in his room. We got a medical bed in there. We ordered that from M&D Victoria. And we got him a CPAP machine because he had to breathe at night because his breathing started to get shit. If you think it's something's bad that you have, like if you have a sore leg or if you have a broken arm, trust me, it's not bad. This is fucked. And watching it unfold slowly gave me a lot of perspective to appreciate life today. And that's the point of this video, because I opened this video up and told you how death can change your life and how if someone dies close to you, it can change the way you look at the world. If my dad hadn't have got this illness, I don't think I would see the world the same way as I do now. Long story short, the next year, stomach tube, no walking, on his couch, walking frame, wheelchair, you name it, it had to get done. Going to the toilet, couldn't wipe his own ass, manually evacuating sometimes, like literally the worst thing, I like had to wipe his ass, shower him. It's not something, and it's not something you want to do. And I have so much respect for carers. And through this time, my dad was quite difficult to deal with. He'd get upset, not because he hated us, but because he hated the situation, and then the only people that he could vent his emotions and frustrations on were us. So we copped a lot of it. Throw shit, like, yeah. Pretty shit thing to witness. But through this time came a positive, because whether this was just going to happen anyway, I started this business in 2020 when the lockdown started. And he was in his last year by this stage. And that's when it started to get downhill. But through this time, that's when I was most active at my parents'. I'd moved closer then, and I was coming every day. I'd work there. I built the free course from my parents' house. I built a lot of the platinum content from my parents' house. And through this time, I didn't allow my dad's sickness, even though it was affecting other areas of my life, like my training. I neglected that pretty heavily. I still had this thing inside me that I want to show this guy that I am going to succeed no matter what happens. And I remember, because I just transitioned from being an osteopath for the last 3.5 years, and I stopped that and I started this course thing, this business, selling match betting to Australia. And my dad would sit there, and at the start, I showed him the free course, and he didn't really show much interest in it. He didn't really understand match betting, thought it was just something that I'd do, he didn't really believe in it. No one really believed that I would actually get anywhere with this idea. But eventually started to get some people joining, and he started telling me, how many today? Like 1, here, 2, 3. And then eventually got like 30, and he'd start to smile every time I told him we got another one. He started to see it work, and you could see him actually being quite proud of it. And now all of this is forgotten to me, because the motivation to succeed is as past proving to people or doing it out of ego and stuff like that. It's just like we're a business, we're going to succeed, and we're going to keep growing. But at the start, that gave me motivation to launch what we've built today. And subconsciously, I reckon for the first 2 years, I had my dad in my head thinking, he'd be asking me, how many members now? How many members now? How many members now? And every time I thought of it, I'd chuckle. Every time we get a new platinum member or a good week, I'd think, fuck, he'd actually be proud of that. And I don't want to sound like a hero here, but you could easily go the other way. When someone gets sick in your life, or someone gets a bad illness, or someone dies suddenly in your family, it can take you months, years to get over that, and you can never recover, and you can choose to play the victim card for the rest of your life. Oh, fuck yeah, my dad got sick and died, and I'm now depressed because of it. I personally did not choose to do that, and that doesn't make me a hero, but I think many people have a choice when they have these situations to decide how that event is going to impact their life. And you can genuinely take massive, massive, unlucky situations, and this is why I don't believe in luck, and turn them into opportunities. I truly believe this. And to our credit, all 4 of us in our family, myself, my sisters, and my mum, are fine now, and maybe we're better from it. My mum took a while to get over this, and to be honest, I respect her enormously for getting through this, because she copped the most. She had to live with my dad for the 3.5 years that he was sick. I at least got to go home, sleep in my own bed, get away from it, come back to it. He then went into hospital. He went into palliative care. I could go on and talk about this for yonks as to how long and how painful it was, and towards the end we just wanted it to stop, because we didn't want to see him in pain anymore, and thankfully it did, and he's in peace now. But the other thing that happened during this time was I actually met my now fiance, who will be my wife in 2 months. And funnily enough, when I was at my most vulnerable point in the history of my life, I met her, and she became this like massive support blanket, which now looking back on it, even at the time I thought it was just because I was vulnerable and anything would have been a comfort for me. It actually wasn't the case. She was there at that time, and whether this is just the way the world pans out, and I'm getting fucking deep here, but my fiance Laura was with me at my most vulnerable time, and we actually met on my dad's birthday, Jan 24, 2021, and she was with me through the worst times. She came to the funeral. She was she was there. And funnily enough, we'd launched our first ever paid subscriptions with our second part of the business on early March as well. And then she was there when he passed away, and she'd stay with me, and she even stayed a night in the hospital one night with me. That for me is a super special thing that I got to share with her, even though she didn't ever get to meet my dad, unfortunately. She met him. She saw him but didn't meet him because he was semi-unconscious in the last week, and she didn't actually get to say, or he didn't acknowledge her because he wasn't aware. But she got to see him at least alive. But it's just a weird one, because it's like that period there. I don't even know what I'm saying here, but it's just a funny one. I got to take an opportunity out of a massively shit situation, and I also got to find a life partner through that situation because of the events that unfolded. And for me, that's a really good outcome out of a bad situation. And I think that's what I took from it. It's like, these situations are going to happen again in my life, and these have molded me into someone who can now be quite unemotional when it comes to things that others would get emotional about. That doesn't mean I'm a rock. I'm still a very emotional person. But going through adversity helps you to appreciate life. Like, I'm not going to sook about someone cutting me off at a traffic light when I wipe my dad's ass to clean his shit on the toilet and seeing him die. Like, you put it on a spectrum of relevance, and it's like, brother, with full respect, there's people starving in Africa, and I watch my dad die of a terminal illness. I'm not going to get angry at some guy cutting me off at a traffic light, or when someone abuses you in the car. It's like, man, like, with full respect, grow up. But some people don't go through these experiences to understand adversity, to then relate. And I'm not saying that I've gone through adversity, because reality is other people have gone and got raped and fucking all sorts of things. And they're obviously going through way more adversity than me. And some people get to look after paralyzed individuals their whole life, or people have illnesses that are way worse than my dad's. So I'm not saying that I've gone through the most adversity of any person. It's not a fucking competition. But all I'm saying is that in times of adversity, you can choose what you want to do from that adversity. You can choose to grow from it, or you can choose to be a victim of it. And for me, I just think that you can genuinely use this stuff as a cheat code to get so far ahead, because it humbles you, and then you have the ability to just grow really fast out of that. And it takes a certain individual to be able to do this. I think it is a choice, genuinely. But there's a lot of variables and factors that need to align for you to get the right outcome. Some of those things are the people you surround yourself, the mindsets that you're already in, the support networks you have around you, your environment, your financial status, that helps enormously, your health level, your age, your previous events, how you were brought up. But all of these things ultimately are still a choice. And it's your choice whether you get out of these situations with a positive or whether you choose to dwell on them and become a victim of them. And I just think that if you are in this situation and you can relate to this, drop a comment below, because I'd love to hear how any adversity that you've been through has helped you to grow. Because for me, it molded me into the person I am now. It made me appreciate life a little bit more. It made me appreciate that you should take the things that you want to do. If you want to go out there and do something and you want to go and travel and it's going to cost you a little bit more and you don't have the budget for it, reality is, if you come back and you have $1,000 or $2,000 less, who gives a fuck? Go and make more. That's how I see it now. Same as my dad. He'd just go and splurge. If you wanted to take someone out for dinner, blow $1,000 on a Chinese restaurant, taking everyone out, go get lobster, he couldn't give a fuck. And that's how I live now. I don't care about money because of that. And I also know how to make it, and now I know how to spend it, and I know that I'm not going to hold myself back because of hoarding it for when I'm 85 or when I'm 70, or maybe I won't get to live that long. Who knows? My dad only got to live to 56, and he lived every second of his life with no regrets. That's the things that I've taken out of his life. And subconsciously, I've never spoken about this. This is the first time. But it subconsciously is the way I live my life now, knowing that I saw my dad die and I saw him go through a life of work hard, work hard, work hard. Luckily, he actually was someone who traveled and didn't have those regrets. But there's people out there that work their entire life, don't travel, save it for when they're retired, and then they go and live their life. It's like, man, you have no guarantees that there's going to be a tomorrow. We're not guaranteed that. So make sure, put your work in, but don't not enjoy yourself. Don't not travel. Don't not go and do something because it costs too much. Don't invest in that thing that you want to get better on an educational course, or you want to buy someone shit. You want to get better at something. Go and get that done. Because trust me, it'll make you better and opportunities will come out of it. Butterfly effect is quite interesting. My dad dies, I make a business. Or my dad was sick, I make a business. Maybe if he didn't get sick and he wasn't as sick as I was, maybe I wouldn't have had the hunger to do it. Who knows? But, yeah. I'll leave it there.